So I'll tell you this. Hello, Governor. I'll tell you this. When I woke up this morning, the alarm went off, and I rolled over in bed, and I nudged my wife awake, and I said, "Hun, in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine I'd be introducing Governor Christie at the FinPro conference?" And she looked at me, still sleep in her eyes, and said, "Honey, you're not in my wildest dreams." Okay. Yeah, we're just getting started now. So how does one introduce Governor Christie? Well, his background's in the book, so there's no reason for me to introduce him that way. So I'm going to introduce him a little differently. I'm going to introduce him when I talk about a person's authenticity. And when I think about a person's authenticity, there's four things that come to mind. How does this individual interact with his children? How does this individual interact with other children? How does this individual interact with non-influential people? And does this person keep his word? So let's go through those quickly. How does a person interact with their own children? Governor Christie, so I happen to live in Mendham Borough. Governor lives in Mendham. We're not neighbors. He has not invited me to his house for dinner yet. But I walk my dog around the Mendham Borough ball fields. I've seen the governor on a Saturday morning out there hooting and hollering when his son's been playing Little League Baseball. And it's really cool to see, not just rooting for his son, but rooting for all the players. That's a big voting yes and authenticity in my mind. So how does a person interact with other people's children? The governor did a press conference, happened to be in the FinPro parking lot on Route 206. It's a number of months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It was a brutally hot day. Had to be 100 degrees. The governor was talking about road construction or something. It was too hot for me to pay attention. But I was in the shade listening to the governor talk, and when he was done, and he stayed in his dark suit the whole time, I don't know how he did it, when he was done, he walked over to us, the FinPro people, to talk to us a little bit. Where's John Morrow at? John Morrow's wife and children happened to be at the office that day, and they were listening to the governor talk. Now, the governor goes from meeting to meeting to meeting. His schedule's crazy. And here's a guy who took 15 minutes to sit, or actually stand, and talk to John Morrow's 5-year-old daughter about what's going on in daycare and school. And I'm thinking to myself while he's doing this is absurd because he's got to be running to another meeting. It was just cool to see the governor of the state of New Jersey, in essence, say, listen, it's more important for me to interact with this young child here and talk to her about school and make her feel important. I can get to the next meeting when I get to the next meeting. Checkbox number 2, pretty cool. Checkbox number 3, how does he deal with people who aren't important to him? So I see the governor around Mendham Apothecary, cleaners on Main Street. You want to know something? He stops and talks to all of us. Doesn't make a difference. I can be in my jeans, I can be in my shorts, I can look like a mess, and if I engage him, he engages me. That's pretty cool. Number 4, how does he keep his word? Governor of the state of New Jersey, given everything that just happened in New York City, given every opportunity that he had to say, you know something, I committed to this speech, but I got other things to do, he's here today, and I think that's pretty cool. So, nice FinPro welcome for Governor Christie.
When I was talking to Scott's wife about her wildest dreams, she also confirmed to me that Scott's not in it, so we agree on that. I want to thank Scott for his introduction, and yes, we have not invited him to the house yet, but that's just because he still hasn't cleared the security clearance with the state police. But we're hopeful that at some point Scott will, and then we can have him over to the house. So I'm happy to be here this morning. I want to thank all of you for the invitation. And you know, as you get down to your final days as governor, and I have 75 days left, not that I'm counting, but you want to spend some of the time that you have left in this office in front of groups that you hope will have influence on what comes after you leave. It's not about establishing your legacy. My legacy is what it will be. It will be judged by people much beyond today. It's about being concerned and interested in what will happen to the state after you are no longer the person who's in charge of it every day, and wanting to be in front of people who you believe can and should have a voice in what our state will look like in the 4 years from now, the 8, 12 years from now. The folks in this room, in my view, are amongst those people who will be the influential voices in all that. Why do I say that? Because in the end, each and every one of you in this room are leaders in your own right. And you are people who others rely upon for your opinions, for your experience, for the things that you not only do professionally, but how that translates over into your personal lives as well. And so I didn't cancel this morning, despite all the other stuff that's going on, for two reasons. One, because I did make a commitment. I wanted to be here this morning, but also secondly, because you learn to do that as governor, as all of you learn to do it in your jobs. You can do more than just walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, so this morning I dealt with a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Of course, the guy who is, under arrest and committed that horrific act, was from New Jersey. And so our involvement in all this has become much deeper than I would have anticipated when I first heard about the attacks. But we can deal with that and do other things as well. That's one of the great things that being governor teaches you if you don't know it before you get here. But all of you deal with similar things in your lives as well in terms of juggling. One of the things I hope that you'll continue to find time to juggle as we move forward is to care about what's happening in the state where you live and work, and to be outspoken about those things that you disagree with. I want to just go through a few of the things that were here when I got here and are not here as I leave, and reminding all of you that in this state, as in most states in this country, but particularly in this state, that past is prologue, if we permit it to be. So let's talk a little bit about that. When I came into the governorship in January of 2010, nearly 8 years ago, we inherited a pretty decent mess, as you all might recall. Some of it brought on by the national economy, but much of it brought on by what we had done in this state to ourselves over time. And my best example of that is to remember this statistic, that between 2001 and 2010, that decade, New Jersey created 0 net new private sector jobs. In a decade, 0. Now, that wasn't just because of the recession of 2008 and 2009. It was that when the economy was growing in the rest of the country, in the post-9/11 era, we were not. And the reason we were not, in my view, was that we were making decisions at the state level that made us non-competitive with the rest of the region and the country. We had Governor McGreevey from 2002 to the middle of 2004, increasing every tax that he could find, creating new ones. I just paid one of the McGreevey taxes this summer. Bought a new car for my daughter. And, during this time as governor, I didn't do that a lot. Go in and buy things and negotiate, because it's an awkward thing. You go into a car dealer and everyone wants to negotiate, right? But when you're the governor, it's kind of an unfair advantage, right? The guy's like, well, it's this much. I'm like, really? Assume your sales tax is up to date, right? So you try not to do that, right? Try not to put yourself in that position. But this summer, I went with my daughter to buy a new car for her, and I paid the tire tax $7.50 a tire. $7.50 a tire. I went back to the office and I'm like, what the hell is this tire tax? So it's great because when you're government, they go research it for you, bring it right back to you. So the lawyers bring it right back to you. Oh, this was established in 2002 by Governor McGreevey, because the theory behind it was that money would be used to responsibly and environmentally safely dispose of the old tires by paying a tax on the new tires. This just gives you an example of how they were reaching. We had a situation where there were no monies being paid into the pension system. We had a situation where we were getting money from the tobacco industry in the settlement of those lawsuits to be able to run anti-tobacco programs and support health care. He bonded against all that money. Gave the tobacco payments to the financial services industry and took a lump sum payment up front to help to balance the budget. And added, in 2.5 years, added over 12,000 people to the state payroll. I've become friends with Governor McGreevey since then, and we've worked on a number of different things regarding prisoner reentry and drug rehabilitation together since then, and we've gotten along well, very well, on those issues. But I can't tell you how many times I've said to him, you know, Jim, you were governor for only 2.5 years, but man, were you efficient. Like, I'm still cleaning up crap that you created from 2002 to 2004, and it's now 2016, 17. He put New Jersey, along with Governor Cody and then Governor Corzine, into a situation where we were completely non-competitive. When I became governor, our unemployment rate was 9.8%. We had over 450,000 New Jerseyans unemployed, the highest that we had ever had. We had a state budget, and I'm getting ready for who the next person's going to be, whether it's going to be Lieutenant Governor Guadagno or Ambassador Murphy. And so I sat with my treasurer and said, you know, let's look at where we are on the budget and make sure that we do it differently than how Corzine did it with us. The way Governor Corzine did it with me was the treasurer at the time, David Rousseau, refused during the entire transition to meet with my team. Refused to allow us to see the books. And all I knew about it was that Governor Corzine said, listen, you're probably going to have a couple of $100 million problem that you're going to have to deal with in the current fiscal year, which when I took over only had 5 months left. He said, but it's not going to be anything big, you'll be able to work it out. Yeah, okay. So then, the end of my first week as governor, the new state treasurer, Andrew Aristoff, came into my office and said, we have a problem we have to talk about. And he said, I finally now gotten a chance to look at the books this first week and analyze where we are from revenues and expenses. And he said, we have a $2 billion problem that we have to fix in the next 6 weeks. And there are two options, right? The two options were to pass a tax increase that would be retroactive to January 1 so I could get the money in as quickly as possible. Increase payroll taxes, increase income taxes, or cut $2 billion worth of spending with 5 months left in the fiscal year. So 7 months of the spending was already out the door, it was gone. And so we went about doing that. We cut $2 billion in spending, and it was painful and it was ugly, and I was not the most popular guy at that moment for having done it. But we wanted to change the tone of the way Trenton was going to operate. And so what's happened in those 8 years since? That really difficult moment. I'll tell you one funny story about that. I made the decisions on the $2 billion in spending, kept it very quiet. And there's a great statute in New Jersey called the Disaster Relief Act. And it allows the governor to declare something a disaster. And when you do, you have almost unlimited authority to do anything that you want to do without legislative approval to deal with the disaster. Now, normally this was used in the context of natural disasters, hurricanes, blizzards, those type of things that we've all had to deal with in this state all the time. I said to my guys, this is a disaster. $2 billion with 5 months left is a disaster. Why can't I use the Disaster Relief Act? So know the lawyers go back into it. I'm a recovering lawyer, by the way, so I don't deal with any of that stuff anymore. But all the lawyers go back into a room for 2 days, and they come back and they say, you know, we really don't see any reason why you can't. That's what I like, all right. So we declare a disaster, and I do all the cutting of spending without any permission from the legislature. I literally listed an executive order. I'm taking all this spending out that they had previously approved, voted on, and had been signed by the previous governor. So to announce this, I decided I'm going to make a joint session speech to the state legislature, but I don't tell them any of it beforehand. And so the Senate president comes to me, Steve Sweeney comes to me before the speech, and he says, where's the advanced copy of the speech? And I said, oh, no, there's no advanced copy of the speech. He said, no, Governor, the tradition is, you may not be aware of this, and you were a prosecutor before, not down here. The tradition is you give us the copy beforehand. And I said, I understand that that's the tradition, and then you leak it, and then everybody gets to write about whatever they want to write about before I speak. I said, that's not the way it works. Not with me. And he said, no, you're supposed to give it to us beforehand. And I looked at him and I said, listen, Steve, this ain't Vegas, and I ain't Wayne Newton. There's one show a night, man. One show a night, show up in there, and you'll hear exactly what I'm going to say, but you'll hear it then. So I went up and I gave the speech, and there were, like, it was an interesting reaction with the Democrat-controlled legislature, and then I left. And they went crazy on the floor of the legislature afterwards, calling me every name in the book, you know, Genghis Khan, you know, Napoleon, you know, all those great leaders in the past that I admire so much. And so the next day, I'm walking into the State House at the same time as the Senate president. And so we walk in, I see him, and I said, hey, Steve, listen, I read all that stuff you said about me in the paper today. Yeah, and I said, so I made a decision. You know what I'm going to do? I said, I'm going to rescind the executive order, and then I'm just going to send this problem down the hall for you guys to fix, and you can decide how to balance the budget. And Steve looked at me and said, ho, Governor, let's not overreact. He said, you know, we were just, you know, it's politics, don't overreact. That was the atmosphere in Trenton. And the biggest thing that I think I've been able to accomplish from that perspective in the last 8 years is to change that attitude. There's no previews, there's no like massages with each other beforehand. We have a job to do. And we changed that culture so that for 8 years now, there have been no tax increases at the state level in the state of New Jersey. No net tax increases for 8 years. This has not happened in the state of New Jersey for more than 5 decades. To go an 8-year stretch with no net state tax increases. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I vetoed a whole bunch of tax increases, every one of them that came across my desk. If it was a net tax increase, it got vetoed. By the same token, we spend $2 billion less today in discretionary spending than we spent 9 years ago. The only things that have gone up in our budget have been pension payments, health insurance payments, and debt service. That's it. And those were all pretty much locked in, as you understand, previous obligations that I gotta pay or we got bigger problems. Everything else is $2 billion less. The state budget today that I'll turn over to the next governor won't have a $2 billion hole. It'll have a $600 million surplus. So he or she will not have to worry about sitting in some conference room looking for $2 billion to cut with 5 months left. What's that meant for our economy? What it's meant for our economy is that we're now in a situation where unemployment is at 4.7%, cut more than in half. We have more New Jerseyans employed today than at any time in our history. We have the second highest per capita income in America, and last year we had the 6th highest income growth year to year in America. New Jersey's economy is doing really well, and it's going to continue to do better if we continue on this path. And so we can talk about all the other things that we've accomplished that have contributed to this. Increasing the gas tax, which I talked about at FinPro, to build roads, build bridges, build all the infrastructure on mass transit that we need to continue to be a vital economy. But the way we increased the gas tax for the first time in 27 years was to demand other things in return so it wouldn't be a net tax increase. So what has happened and will happen this January 1st? The sales tax has been reduced for the first time in 20 years. So that folks who are buying everyday items will pay less in sales tax. The estate tax as of January 1st is eliminated. We had the worst estate tax in America, $675,000 exclusion only. And then if you got the $675,001, you pay tax on the whole thing. It was the worst estate tax in America. It will be gone completely. There will be no estate tax in New Jersey come January 1st of this year. Retirees in this state will now have their first $100,000 in retirement income excluded from state income tax. Previously it was $20,000. So now folks who want to retire here and stay here won't have to worry about paying the state income tax on the first $100,000 of retirement income, because my view is you already paid tax on that income. You paid tax on it before you saved it. And then we're going to take it out, we're going to tax you again. The net tax cuts. Tax cuts were $1.4 billion in tax cuts. It was a $1.2 billion increase in the gas tax. So net, we cut taxes by $200 million. If I hadn't demanded that, believe me, they just would have raised the gas tax and that would have been it. We wouldn't have gotten any kind of tax reductions anywhere else. We've cut the corporate business tax by $2.3 billion. We've cut the unemployment insurance tax by $600 million. All of those things have contributed to putting more money in the economy and allowed people to spend that money in the economy, both as consumers and as investors in their businesses to create jobs. So why do I come to FinPro this morning? Because we got an election in 5 days. Two starkly different views of the future. We have a lieutenant governor whose main job in our administration has been job creation and business atmosphere. And so all those things I just talked about, she was an integral part in helping to build and develop and make happen, and she will bring that same philosophy to the next 4 years. And then we have the Democratic nominee for governor, Ambassador Murphy, who has never held public office except for being the ambassador to Germany, which I'm still trying to find the correlation to Governor of New Jersey, Ambassador to Germany. I don't know how that's going to translate. But I will tell you what he's telling you he's going to do. And I will give him some credit for modest honesty in campaigning, only modest honesty. He's already promised $1.3 billion in state tax increases in his campaign. Now, let me tell you, as somebody who's had a little bit of experience in politics at both the state and national level, when somebody's promising you to raise taxes $1.3 billion on you when they're asking for your vote, it's only the beginning. They got a much bigger plan in mind, but they figure, I don't want to be called a liar later, so I'll tell them a little bit of what I'm going to do, but not the whole thing. He's promised $1.3 billion in tax increases. He's promised $9 billion in additional spending. So now, I'm a FinPro. You all make it your business to make books balance and to run businesses. $1.3 billion in new revenue, $9 billion in new spending. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. He will increase the state payroll. He will, and let's say what we've done on that, by the way. The state of New Jersey today has 11,000 fewer employees than the day I took the oath of office. 11,000 fewer. And I don't think any of you have noticed a grave difference in like the service you're getting with 11,000 fewer employees. In fact, you might say, how about 40,000 fewer employees? 11,000 fewer employees. He will increase that number. He will increase what we're talking about in terms of the money that's coming out of your pocket and the pocket of your employees, your investors, everybody that you work with. And this comes at a time when we can't afford to be less competitive. And so there's a stark difference. Put aside all the other stuff too, that he wants to legalize marijuana, he wants to make this a sanctuary state so that if you immigrate here illegally, law enforcement can't even ask you a question. You have free reign. You will be freely protected by law enforcement. He wants to materially change the face of the state. So there's a big choice to be made on Tuesday. And I want you to understand what the ramifications of that will be. If he raises taxes to that level, New Jersey will go back, which is why I said past this prologue, to the 2001 to 2010 period. Now the national economy may help to push us along a little bit more, but we know that people are mobile and they have choices. If he raises taxes on people who make over $500,000 a year, which he's promised to do, to up near 12% on the state level, well then what do you think those people are going to do? They're going to leave. Worse yet, they won't leave permanently. Here's what they do in New Jersey. They buy a house in Florida. They stay in Florida 6 months and a day, so they're not subject to New Jersey income tax, and there's no income tax in Florida. So for just short of 6 months, we'll have the obligation of providing them services that they'll be contributing nothing towards. We've seen this happen over and over again. Every time we've done this, we've lost citizens. But we're now to the point where we really can't afford to lose any more high-paid citizens. We used to have a lot of them. We now just have some. But I want you to remember this. When you hear guys like Ambassador Murphy talk about the wealthy in this state paying their fair share, the top 1% of taxpayers in this state pay 41% of the income tax. 1% pays 41%. How much more fair share are you looking for? And how much more do you think they will actually pay before they say, adios, we're out of here? And when those folks leave, they take a lot of money with them. Jobs, disposable income, all those things go. We had one taxpayer leave last 2 years that, by our best estimates, cost us, for one person, $150 million. We can't countenance this type of activity. Now, I know what happens in this state. It's past this prologue. No party has gotten 3 terms in a row in the governorship in 56 years. So New Jerseyans, on the governorship at least, tend to go back and forth between the two parties. So, I'll give you examples. They had 8 years of Brendan Byrne, then they did 8 years of Tom Kean. Then after 8 years of Tom Kean, they did 4 years of Jim Florio. That was enough. So after 4 years of Jim Florio, they did 8 years of Christie Whitman. After 8 years of Christie Whitman, they did 8 years of Democrats, McGreevey and Corzine. And after that, they've done 8 years of me. So I understand that the inclination is, this is the way it works. This is the way New Jerseyans think. They had 8 years of Brendan Byrne where he established the income tax and raised the sales tax. And geez, the Democrats, all they do is raise my taxes, give me a Republican. So they get the Republican. When the Republican comes in, even though this is a hugely Democratic state, over 800,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in New Jersey. We have the longest streak in America now We haven't elected a Republican to the United States Senate since 1972. 44 years we haven't elected a Republican. This is a blue state, a deeply blue state. But yeah, you get 4 years of Tom Kean, the economy's growing, taxes are lower, everything's going great, so they go, yeah, I only like these Republicans, we'll give them another 4 years. Then after 8 years of somebody at the top that says no to things, because if you don't say no to things, oh, you gotta raise taxes, people go, oh, we're so tired of hearing no. We want the guy or a woman who will say yes. So they elect Jim Florio. He says yes, all right. $2.8 billion in tax hikes, increased spending all over the place, and after 4 years of that, people go, oh, no, we forgot. We forgot what the Democrats do to us in this state when they come in here. They raise these taxes. It's crazy. All right, we'll go back to the Republicans. So Christie comes in. She cuts taxes. She decreases spending. The economy grows. And they go, okay, we'll re-elect her. They re-elect her. Then after 8 years, they go, oh, these Republicans. They're always saying no, not nice. Democrats are nice. It's not nice. We need nice again. So let's elect Jim McGreevey. He seems like a nice young man. And he says yes to everybody. Sure did. Billions more in taxes, billions more in spending and borrowing. And the only thing that saved the Democratic Party after 4 years was that he quit after 2.5. If Jim McGreevey had ever stood for re-election in 2005, he would have never won. Not in a million years. But he got out, and John Corzine came. And remember how John Corzine ran for governor in 2005. John Corzine said, I'm a businessman, I'm going to run this as a business, I'm going to cut taxes for the middle class, and I'm going to decrease the size of government. John Corzine ran as a fiscal Republican. And everybody went, well, all right, Goldman Sachs, smart guy, why not? And he came in, raised taxes, raised spending, governed as a traditional Democrat. And I was standing there 4 years later as the lucky recipient. Let me be very clear here. 2009 election, I didn't win. He lost. And by the way, it's okay by me because the oath is the same. Whether you win or the other guy loses, the oath is the same. I was out there, it's me. The next election's about you. And what happened again past this prologue? 4 years of cutting spending, cutting taxes, creating jobs, strong, decisive leadership that says no, and a Republican in this state got 61% of the vote for re-election. That one was about me. Now we're 4 years later, and people are tired of me. I understand that. I get tired of me sometimes. I'm tiring, because I never stop. I say what I think, I say it loudly and directly and clearly, and even when I know you're not going to like it, I say it anyway. And I do that because I've always thought that's who you are. That's who New Jersey is. Straight-talking, tough-edged people who don't like to put up with BS and want decisions made and their lives kind of left to themselves. But here we are. What I'm worried about next Tuesday is after 8 years of someone saying no, I vetoed more bills than any governor in New Jersey history. And go, we want to hear yes again. Let me just warn you. When you say yes, they spend your money. It reminds me of like when I was a kid and my mother would say, you want to go to the supermarket with me? And I'd say, sure, because I always knew that the guy who went to the supermarket got to pick out a few things. And there was one particular thing that I wanted at the supermarket. I said to my mother, can we have this? And she goes, oh, sure, Chris, you can have that. So I went to grab it. She said, well, you have to pay for it. And I go, well, how? 13 years old. Like, how am I going to pay for it? She goes, you go in the backyard when we get home, and you pick the money off of the magic money tree. And then you give that money to me. And I said, Mom, we don't have a money tree in the backyard. She said, exactly, put it down. this candidate for governor believes in agriculture. When they asked him what was his solution to people having trouble paying their property taxes, do you know what he said? He said, well, they're just going to have to make more money. That's easy for a guy from Goldman Sachs to say. Pays $250,000 a year in property taxes. Just make more money. Well, for some people in the state that's possible, but for many it is not. But I don't care so much about the philosophical difference there. Think about the attitude. The problem's not government and spending, it's you. You're not making enough money. We need that money from you. Make more so we can take it. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen if the election goes the other way this Tuesday. And if past is prologue, people will go, oh God, we forgot. I don't know how. After Byrne and McGreevey and Florio and Corzine, I don't know how we continue to forget. But remember this, no Democrats gotten 2 terms since Brendan Byrne. 3 Republicans have. Kane, Whitman, and me. How about we cut out the middleman this time? How about, why go through the 4 years of pain to get back to what we really want a governor to do anyway? Why not just go ahead and do it? Give the lieutenant governor an opportunity. I'm not here to campaign for her this morning. I'm just telling you that I'm going to be living here. And I don't want this to happen to our state as a citizen, as someone who's raising my family here. I don't want to go back to the bad old days of not being able to create jobs. I don't want to go back to the bad old days of higher taxes. I don't want to go back to the bad old days where somebody who's running government thinks government is the solution to every problem. Because it isn't. And it never has been. When Sandy happened, government was the solution to that problem. It had to be. The opioid crisis we're going through right now, government's going to have to step up and help to fix those problems. But not every problem. And not every dollar out of your pocket. You all are going to have to be the people who raise your voices. If not on Tuesday, and if the election goes the other way, then you have to raise your voices after. Or else what has happened before will happen again. I will tell you this, I'll take your questions. I'll be sitting from a very relaxed seat. For the first time in 16 years, I'll be out of public service. And 8 years as the federal prosecutor in this state, and if you want to talk about a growth business, in New Jersey, being the federal prosecutor is a growth business. And then 8 years as governor. I've had an extraordinary run in public life, and 2 of, I think, the best jobs you could possibly have in government. So I'm not looking for another one. I'm done. I tried for one other one, but it didn't work out. Some guy who has a business down the street here won. But I do care about what happens, not because of my legacy. That's rearview mirror stuff. I care about this because of my future. I have a 24-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter who are away from New Jersey right now, one for a job, one for college, that I'd love to have come back here. Because if they have children one day, I'd like to be able to get in the car and drive to see my grandchildren. I have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter who I'd like to be able to finish their school careers here, go off to college, and hopefully come back here as well. I was born here and raised here, and I prefer to die here. And I don't want to be forced out because I can't afford to live here anymore. Or because, even if I could afford to live here, I choose not to. Because they're just taking too much of the money that I work so hard to earn. Those are the stakes, everybody. There's lots of other issues that we should be concerned about, but in the end, if you can't pay the bills, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. If you can't put food on the table, nothing else matters. You can't pay the mortgage and the property taxes, nothing else matters. Let's not put ourselves back in that position again. We've done a lot to change this. proud of what we've done. But it can change in the blink of an eye. That blink is coming in 5 days. I'll end with this. Somebody asked me, do you wish you were on the ballot on Tuesday? I'm like, are you kidding? Absolutely not. 8 years is enough. 8 years is enough. There was wisdom. George Washington, I don't know how he figured it out. 220 years ago. A guy who could have been president forever decided that after 8 years, that was enough. And it has become the standard in our country. Almost every state has term limits for their governors. We now have term limits for our president at 8 years. At the miracle of Washington's wisdom. Because I can tell you, 8 years is enough. I love this job. I've loved every minute of it. Maybe not every minute, but most of it. And I would do it again if I could move the clock back 8 years. I wouldn't change anything. But it's time for a new voice. I just don't want us to pick a voice that will make us feel good for a couple of minutes, but then make us hurt for the majority of 4 years. We can then fix it again after that, but every time we lose ground, every time. Because I haven't gotten back all the bad things that Corzine and McGreevy did from a tax perspective. I got some of them, but not all of them. Some of them stay. The tire tax is still there. We're able to get rid of that one. We lose ground every time. Let's not lose ground again. You all are the people who can speak authoritatively on a lot of these issues. Not just at the ballot box on Tuesday, but afterwards. I beseech you to do so. And I'm here this morning because I want, in some small way, to use the experience I've gained over the last 8 years to help to encourage you to do that. So I'll end with that and take your questions. Whatever you want to ask me about. Totally open mic night. Have at me. Whatever you want to ask me. Yes, sir.
First of all, Governor.
They're going to bring you a microphone.
Thank you for your service. What is your next chapter? What are you going to focus on in the next few years?
I have absolutely no idea. There's lots of different opportunities, I think, that are out there for me. There's some fairly strict ethics laws in the state that don't allow me to come to any agreements on future employment while I'm still in this job for the next 75 days. So for the first time since I left law school in 1987, on January 17th, I will be unemployed. Guaranteed unemployed because I can't make an agreement to do anything. So I don't know. I'll continue to want to have some public voice, but not on state issues. I'm not going to be one of these governors who's going to sit around and critique everything that the next person does. I hated when former governors did that to me because they really had no idea about what I was going through, and some of them were governors so long ago that the government is now twice the size that it was when they ran. So I assume I'll have a public voice on national issues. And then, I'll be honest with this group, I gotta make some money. I haven't made more than $175,000 a year for 16 years. And 175 is my high mark. When I was a prosecutor, I made anywhere between 140 and 150. Now I'm, fortunate that I married well. And Mary Pat has had an extraordinary career in the finance business, but this is like one of the unknown casualties of my presidential campaign. So Mary Pat was working for Angelo Gordon in New York, and they decided collectively that when I was going to announce for president, that she should really take a leave of absence from there because they didn't want any conflicts and all the rest of that. And it made perfect sense for us and for them. So Mary Pat left in, I think it was March or April of 2015 from working. The first time she had not worked since she graduated from college. And she worked full-time on the presidential campaign. So when I dropped out of the presidential race in February of 16, we were sitting at home that first weekend afterwards. And I said to her, so when are you going back to work? And she said to me, I'm not. I said, what do you mean you're not? And she said, yeah, I didn't tell you that. And I said, not that I remember. And she said, yeah, I decided during the campaign. She She said that the kids really need me at home. And so I'm not going back. I said, like, I don't have to take the 1040 out, right, to show you kind of like how much you make versus how much I make and like how this is going to work. And she goes, no, I get it. She goes, I have great confidence in your future potential. And recently we went out to dinner with some friends of mine from high school. We're not very political. And one of the guys, the guy at the table said to me, so Chris, like when you leave, are you going to go work for Trump? And before I could answer, Mary Pat said, we're hoping Chris finally realizes his financial potential. So basically my answer to you is, I'm not sure, but I know what Mary Pat's expectations are, and they're pretty significant. And she's told me though, I get out on January 16th, is the inauguration day for the next governor. And she's told me I got till February 1st. Incredibly generous. She's given me 2 weeks off after the last 16 years. And she said, by February 1st, like, you have to do something. We've been married for 31 years. She's like, I cannot have you around here all day. Like, you're gonna have to figure out something to do, buddy, by February 1st. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of different potential, a lot of things I'd like to try after this last 16 years. But I mean, when I became U.S. Attorney, I was 39 years old. And I'm now 55. So it's time for me to spend the next 16 years of my life doing things that I hope are interesting and productive, but also help to pay for the last 2 kids to go through college and hopefully allow Mary Pat and I to have some fun time off with each other. I think we've earned it. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your speech. It was excellent. I live in Rutherford, New Jersey, and I know obviously you're 75 days from exiting. I take the train into the city every day, and the deterioration in the service over the last whatever number of years has been incredible. I used to be very proud when we went to other parts of the country to tell them about our transit system. But there are trains I have to get off out of feeling claustrophobic. Can you speak to whatever hope there might be going forward that something will be done that has tremendous impact on people's lives and obviously impacts the ability to grow the area?
Sure. First thing is that's part of the reason for the increase in the gas tax. So to give you some perspective on it, right now we spend in state money about $1.6 billion a year on infrastructure, roads, bridges, mass transit. With the increase in the gas tax, that will now increase to $2 billion a year. So we'll have a 25% increase in that spending. The biggest thing that we have to do on the transit side of things is get an agreement with the federal government to build 2 new workable tunnels underneath the Hudson River. Now, when I became governor, there was a plan called ARC that was going to build tunnels underneath there, and we're not going to go to Penn Station in New York, but we're going to go to a $2 billion terminal we were going to build underneath Macy's. And then have people have to go 7 stories up, walk from Macy's to Penn Station, and then get whatever next train is going to be or wherever they're going to go from there in the city. In addition, that was a deal negotiated by Governor Corzine, where the federal government was paying 1/3 of the cost, New Jersey was paying 2/3, and any cost overruns were going to be 100% absorbed by New Jersey. Now, what could possibly go wrong when tunneling under the Hudson River and the island of Manhattan? I can't imagine there would be any cost overruns. It was ridiculous. We now have a deal on the table with the federal government, which is being finalized now with the Trump administration, where the tunnels go to Penn Station. The federal government pays 50% of the cost, New Jersey pays 25% of the cost, and New York pays 25% of the cost. If that deal is finalized, which I think it will be between now and the end of the year, then those tunnels will begin to be built. The Portal Bridge, which for those of you going to New York, you know it's that bridge that's up right near where you are, in just south between Essex and Bergen County, which is a 1901 bridge. It's one of those swing bridges where it's got to open, but it opens and swings open, then the boat goes past, and then it swings closed. That bridge is so bad that sometimes guys actually have to get out there with mallets to hit on the side of it to get it to fully close. We just broke ground 2 weeks ago to build a new Portal Bridge, which will be high enough that it doesn't have to open at all. tell you that for those who commute into New York, not on the rest of the rail system around New Jersey, but the ones that are into New York, the biggest thing that made your experience in the last 4 years or so much worse was Sandy. Because Sandy degraded those tunnels, the existing tunnels, and lowered our ability to have capacity to go through there. And that was the real turning point in New Jersey transit commuting between New Jersey and New York. So these 2 new tunnels, once you get them up, will allow us to then rehab the existing tunnels. And I think within 10 years, you'll have 4 fully modernized operational tunnels that will allow extraordinary capacity to go through there, trains to be added, so you have a less claustrophobic feel on the trains you have. But it's going to be a 10-year project. And that's just the nature of public works in this area, given all the complications. But it will be a deal that will not stick it to the New Jersey taxpayers as the last one would. It will be a deal where we're partners with Amtrak. So we have the federal government coming in for 50% of the cost. And it's just a better deal for New Jersey and a better deal for our commuters. But Sandy was the big change moment in terms of commuting into New York City on New Jersey Transit. And until we get those new tunnels built, it will continue to be a difficulty. It's not about adding more trains, because if we added more trains, we couldn't get them through because of the diminished capacity of those tunnels. And believe me, up until, what was it, March or April of 2015, the First Lady of New Jersey was on those trains too, every day. So your comment to me was much kinder than the comments I got from the First Lady who was trying to take the Midtown Direct into New York to go to Angela Gordon. Other questions from anybody about anything? Yes, sir.
Governor?
This way. Oh, this way. Okay. I'll get to you when you get a microphone. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. The ambassador floated the idea of a state bank. Your thoughts and insights on the...
That's a great idea. Give government the opportunity to run a bank. Is there anybody in there, I'm just interested, I really am interested in your honest answer. Is there anybody in this room in favor of the state having its own bank? Okay. Only one state in America has it. That's North Dakota. Why? Are you from North Dakota? All right. So why does North Dakota have its own bank?
The bank is there to collect the tax revenues from the state, and it is very conducive to economic development because it partners with community banks and private banks, distributes capital for new ideas and expansion in North Dakota.
Right. And North Dakota, I think it's fair to say, is not the finance epicenter of America, right?
For responsibility, yes.
Well, yeah. Granted. The idea that New Jersey, the New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia area would need a state bank to perform those functions just is ridiculous. I mean, this is the finance capital of the world. And the idea that we need a state bank to help to coordinate, make more conducive those type of partnerships. We have more private sector banking in this area of the country than any place else in America. And the idea that the tax revenues of our state will be then collected and managed in that way rather than distributed to all the private banks as we do now is a frightening prospect. And they will pay whoever runs this bank government wages. Get ready for that too. Who's going to take the government wage to run that enterprise? And the person who does, what is the quality of the person that you'll get? This is a really, really monumentally bad idea for our state. Plus, in North Dakota, with all due respect, there has not been the history of financial mischief that there's been here in New Jersey. Let me tell you this, if they set up a state bank, I'm going back to being a prosecutor. Because that will then be, it will be a growth industry once again. I have my doubts that the legislature will ever permit this. And, the idea, again, and it really is all about control. What Ambassador Murphy wants is he wants to control all of the money. So he gets to decide how it gets spent, not you. I'd much rather have, folks in the private banking industry making those decisions rather than a government. So I would be opposed to it. I don't think there's much chance of it happening. And if it does, put your hands on your wallets, everybody, because when the bank makes some bad investment decisions, they're not going to their shareholders. They're not going to the Fed to get help. They're going to you. You're the shareholders of that bank. Sir.
I'm a great admirer of what you've done here in New Jersey. Although I'm surprised you didn't give some credit to Governor Malloy. He's driven some business your way, I'm sure.
He is one of New Jersey's great ambassadors.
So, I live in Connecticut.
I'm sorry.
Yes. If we are fortunate enough to get a Republican governor in the next time around, we're still likely to have a Democratic legislature. I'd love to know what advice you would give the next governor to have to work with that legislature, because we have some problems here.
Yeah. Well, I've had a Democratic legislature for every minute of every day of my governorship. And I think it's one of the really underreported, under-discussed parts of this governorship. We have gotten enormous things done with a Democratic legislature. And if you're governor, the way to do it is, first you have to work it. You have to develop relationships with the legislators, and that takes time. And believe me, there are members of the state legislature that I don't want to spend 5 minutes with, let alone 5 hours, 5 months, 5 years. But it's your job, because they're a co-equal branch of government, and you have to bring them along. You also have to be willing to take half a loaf. This is the problem in Washington. In Washington, they all say it's not a win unless it's 100% win. I'm, Ronald Reagan's philosophy, where he says, if a guy agrees with you 70% of the time, he's not your 30% enemy, he's your 70% friend. So I've compromised on things. Like, I wanted an income tax cut. They wouldn't give me one, but they would give me a corporate business tax cut. Okay, I took it. I wanted to reduce the sales tax a full point. They would only go a half point. Okay, I didn't say the hell with you. I took a half point. They wanted to increase the gas tax. Okay, then eliminate the estate tax. Can you imagine that I got 2/3 of Democrats in the legislature to approve eliminating the estate tax? I mean, they would never do that. But for me pushing it and giving them a tax increase on the other side, but saying to them, it has to be a net tax decrease. The biggest thing in the beginning is you have to be willing to say no. You have to dig your heels in and stand your ground. They're going to test you. So if there's a new Republican governor in Connecticut next year, they're going to test that person. And how you respond to that testing will determine how the next number of years goes. If you say to them, here are the things that are principled for me, that I will not yield on, the rest is open to negotiation. And you can't make your entire governorship a matter of principle, because then you just be sitting in the room by yourself getting nothing done. So you gotta compromise. In their wisdom, the people of New Jersey voted for me twice and for a Democratic legislature twice. This shows that we are some of the meanest, angriest people in America. Angry, nasty, horrible people to do that to each other. The Democrats can't wait for me to go. And quite frankly, I would have given my left arm for a week of a Republican legislature. But this is the wisdom of democracy. This is what they decided to do, and so you got to get in there, and you got to find ways to make it work. You got to give them on certain things that you wouldn't want to give them, but you never give them anything without getting something back. Not a nomination, not a spending item, not a revenue issue, nothing without getting something in return. You set up a circumstance where I'm willing to bargain, but everything, except for matters of principle, are open to bargain. And ultimately, they all benefit, right? Because for the last 8 years, we all won. I got what I wanted in the main and got reelected. They got what they wanted in the main and got reelected. And the state progressed. It wasn't everything I would have wanted, but it was pretty good. And I think that that's the beauty of two-party rule. You know, it's not always comfortable, and I wasn't always comfortable with it, but you can make it work, but you have to be committed to it. And, you know, like when the Senate president would ring the phone at 11 o'clock at night because he was angry with something, you know, Mary Pat wasn't thrilled. And I assigned people specific ringtones on my phone so I'd know who it was without even looking, right? So Steve Sweeney, the Senate president, is a big Green Bay Packers fan. I'm sure that his constituents are Eagles fans, not thrilled with that, but he's a big Packers fan, and me as a Cowboys fan understand when people hate you because of who you root for in football. But, so Sweeney's ringtone on my phone is the Green Bay Packers theme song that they play when they score a touchdown in Green Bay. And when that song would play, tell you how much we've spoken over the years, everyone in my family knows who it is. Even my 14-year-old daughter, even when she was 10 or 11. We'd be there on a weekend, the phone would be sitting on the kitchen table, and that Go Pack Go song would start playing. She's like, Dad, it's Mr. Sweeney, you know, and you have those conversations regularly, you make yourself open and available to talk and to meet all the time, because that's the only way trust develops. And in the end, the way you get these deals done is you be a person of your word and they can count on you. So whenever I looked at Steve Sweeney and told him I would definitely do this or I wouldn't do that, he knew it was the truth. And the same thing from him to me. And that's the way you get things done. And I think, listen, if you can get a Republican governor, take it. Take it. It will change things in Connecticut. And things do need to be changed in Connecticut. And by the way, no one likes Dan Malloy among the governors here, just so you know. But he used to be only the second most unpopular guy in the room because Marty O'Malley from Maryland used to be there, but now that Marty's gone, Dan's got the crown. Other questions for anybody about anything? Well, I want to thank you for the invitation to be here. I want to thank you for what you do for our state, and I want to thank you for believing in our state. It's still a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. And I have traveled to every state in this country, and I can tell you, with the possible exception of North Dakota, that you probably wouldn't want to live anyplace else. I hope we don't force you to make that choice. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it.
Huh?